I just want to say that Steve and I are thrilled to be here today to talk to you about our cyber security incident and share some thoughts with you about what we experienced and what we learned from the whole process. So I'm going to start with the basic facts. Okay, you can do that. On October 28th, as Davis mentioned, we experienced a cybersecurity attack. The event quickly came to the attention of our ITS staff with multiple alerts in our computer center. And staff proactively shut down the whole technical environment to protect against the propagation of the malware and as an attempt to maintain as much as possible the integrity of the internal systems. Within hours, our business continuity plans were launched, and I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. And that was really important. And at the same time as that was happening, we had third-party cybersecurity specialists that were converging on our data center in Toronto. This was a ransomware attack, and I can tell you right now we did not pay the ransom. We felt very strongly that we're not going to negotiate with criminals and we're not going to help fund cybercrime. So that was a very strong position we held from the very beginning. So in line with the business continuity plan, we had a governance structure was quickly established. And you can imagine with over 2,400 staff and 100 branches serving 3 million people in Toronto, it was absolutely critical to have a defined governance structure in place for decision-making, for priority setting, coordination, and communications. This is a huge part of what we did throughout this process, and this structure really served us well in terms of working through all these processes. So the structure included 3 layers, which you can see on the screen here. The top layer was the senior leadership team, and that was called the Cyber Response Leadership Team, or CRLT. We always use acronyms. And this group was responsible for engagement with breach counsel, developing organizational communications, and coordinating the overall response plan. The next layer was the Library Operations Center, or the LOC. The LOC consisted of representation from people from across the organization, including technical leadership. And this group was really, really key in coordinating our business operations with technical recovery teams. It was really an essential process. We met with them every day for about 2 months. I'll be talking more about the Library Operations Center, but they were key in terms of this whole business continuity plan and the recovery process. The third layer was the management response team, which included managers and key stakeholders across the system, and they were aided in receiving and distributing communications to staff, responded to questions, and maintained many operational services during the cyber event. And they were key in getting information from the senior team down to the front line, and then also from the front line up to the senior team. They were really critical in this communications process. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Library Operations Center, or the LOC. The LOC, as I said, formed a crucial component of the service recovery process, and key responsibilities including supporting the creation and distribution of internal communications, providing recommendations on service recovery prioritization. This was a huge topic of conversation. It's not like when you're recovering, it's not like you can flip a switch and everything's going to turn on again. You have to decide what IT is going to work on first, and what in terms of the recovery process, once they've got the foundations completed. In terms of the recovery process, what are the prioritized services that will be brought up first? Is the website going to be brought, will we wait with the website and bring it up all at once, or should we bring it up in phases as different components of the website are available? So there's a lot of decision making and discussion along the way about how we would do this. So another part of, a key part of this whole process was having breach counsel. So I'm going to highlight the importance of some key consulting parties that provided support to TPL, particularly during the early days of the cyber attack. Engaging legal counsel, or more precisely breach counsel, I didn't even know these people existed when we started this process. I'd never heard of breach counsel, or that the fact that there were lawyers who were experts in cybersecurity. And this would prove to be a really critical step for us as the attack unfolded, and also in establishing trust with our stakeholders. The Breach Council provided guidance and support to us in so many ways, including communications, legal obligations, engagement, and with the technical consultants, and aided with legal privilege. And legal privilege was also something that was really important through this process. We had the lawyers sit in on meetings where they didn't really need to be there, but we wanted them there to protect legal privilege. And so that was a really important part of this whole process, because we were discussing very sensitive topics. The other part of that is that we had Breach Counsel review all of our communications with the staff, communications with the public, communications with the board, everything, because, and we learned a lot through this process. Some of the advice we were given is, don't speculate. Don't speculate of where you're going to be in a little while. Don't speculate on anything. And in fact, in the first few days of the cyber attack, we believed, we had no evidence at least, of any personal information being compromised. And so we were very careful to say there is no evidence that personal information has been compromised. But then, as you'll learn through this discussion this morning, we did find soon after that personal information was compromised, and it was important for us to get out there and tell people that quickly once we figured that part out. So the legal counsel also assisted with the engagement of the cybersecurity specialists, and these, of course, not surprisingly, resources brought unique expertise necessary to ensure containment, to lead the forensic assessment, and guided TPL through the secure service recovery, with the added benefit of establishing trust with our key stakeholders. During this period, we increased our engagement with the City of Toronto's CISO staff, the Chief Information Security Office, and they also offer technical consulting, dark web monitoring, and is supporting TPL now with activity monitoring through its Security Operations Center. And certainly our openness to collaborate with the city was really an important part of our collaborative approach. And it was really essential in bringing a stronger, positive relationship and trust from the city. One thing I want to emphasize through all of this is that our services continued throughout this cyber attack. So all 100 branches remained open. So while the cybersecurity attack occurred on a Saturday, on the 28th, the 29th we had branches open on the 29th, and they all opened on the 29th. Albeit with limited services in terms of the technical environment being shut down. But materials continued to be borrowed and returned. New customers were registered for borrower cards. And for an extended period of time, our staff had to resort to manual writing down the barcode for the borrower card and barcodes for all the items that were being borrowed. And I was really concerned, we knew we were going to have to do this for a long time because all of our computers were shut down. No one could touch a computer that had been on the network. And so it was important for the staff to feel supported by their supervisors and managers, but the staff were absolutely wonderful. We had not one complaint from our staff for having to do this for several months. And I'll be talking about the volume of work that this involved in a moment. But it was really tremendous on the part of our staff. Public Wi-Fi remained available throughout the service recovery process. Programming continued to be offered, and study spaces were also incredibly well used throughout this process. Even though our public computers were not available, people could still bring in their devices and use our Wi-Fi. Most e-resources remained available, which was really wonderful. Vendors temporarily remove the authentication required when you usually access an e-resource on our website. So people could just click on Overdrive, as an example, and they'd go directly to Overdrive. They didn't have to authenticate with their library card. And so that meant tremendous access for all of our customers through this difficult period. And I would have to say, too, that remaining open and continuing to offer services, and as many services as possible, often with a lot of workarounds, resulted in a lot of goodwill and support from our customers. We had very, very few complaints. In fact, we had so many comments from our customers supporting us and being appalled about the fact that the public library had been attacked through cybercrime. So anyway, that just gives you a bit of an overview or flavor of how this all started. And now I'm going to turn it over to Steve to talk about the technical part of things.
So thanks, Vickery. So you've got a sense of the event and what occurred, and as Vickery mentioned, throughout this process of recovery, we continued services. But the process of service recovery itself, I can tell you, was a very long and arduous process. We took the position that every system was deemed to be compromised, and that was whether we had evidence, demonstrable evidence to support that to be the fact or not. Either way, everything attached to the network was deemed to be compromised. And that's how we approached our service recovery. So the process started with the creation of parallel VLANs or networks within the data center. Essentially, we rebuilt the data center again in parallel to the existing network environment from the ground up. Once we had established new virtual networks, we then created the foundational services and bringing them back online. So when I mean that, for example, is DHCP or Active Directory, all those core services that you just need to instantiate a technology environment, essentially. Through the forensic process as well, we determined that we could recover from our data backup, and we could recover from the last known backup state. And so that greatly assisted with the recovery process in terms of bringing our data back online. Nonetheless, we quarantined all recovery of systems or data for periods of days to assess the data itself for malware embedded within those systems or within the data file services that were brought back to recovery. So we, colloquially what we called Quarantine Island, all data that was restored from backup recovery moved to Quarantine Island for a period of time, up to a week, while there was forensic activity and assessment was done, and then ultimately from there it would be moved into our new production environment that had been created. Through collaboration, as Vickery mentioned also, with our Library Operations Center group, we determined priority of all system enterprise application recovery. So we only had a limited capacity, and again, as Vickery mentioned, you can't do everything at once, and so we had to have a lot of negotiation around what is the number one system we need to bring back online now, or more specifically, what's the number one enterprise application we need to bring back online, because as you probably know yourselves, that every application is not necessarily one system per se, it's actually a collection of multiple systems. And so that we would kind of map back out to, okay, what's everything we need to do to bring this application back online again. Ultimately, though, within our data center, some of the key enhancements that we moved forward with as we went through service recovery is we improved overall firewall network security and network isolation port blocking. As we rebuilt our networks, there's a lot more stringent security controls now within those environments than there was previously. We implemented more improved server hardening policies and procedures. We've improved our overall patch management regime across all aspects of technology within the data center. And we introduced an enhanced log management as well with the adoption of Microsoft Sentinel. So for those who aren't necessarily aware of what Microsoft Sentinel is in a technology environment, essentially it's a platform for us to aggregate and collate all kinds of activities that are happening within our data center and across our network collectively. And it gives us greater visibility in the future as to any activity happening from a threat actor within our environment, as opposed to on a single system per se, but if there is activity happening across systems that maybe itself independently seems innocuous, but collectively maybe tells a bigger story. Next slide. Thanks, Vickery. Mm-hmm. So following the progress within the data center, we then start to extend out into our branch network. As Vickery mentioned, we have a branch network of about 100 branch locations. And every single endpoint throughout the branch network, again, was deemed compromised and had to be forensically assessed before it could be brought back online again and brought back into our new production environment. Initially, without the usual typical central management tools like System Center Configuration Manager, or SCCM from Microsoft, we had to do the manual process. We literally sent people out to every single location, installed additional products on these endpoints directly, and also a forensic analysis tool as well to collect data logs from the endpoints so we could bring them back centrally, assess them, and determine whether the system was safe and eligible to be brought back online. With a lot of hybrid work going on these days, we had to also host a lot of hybrid or laptop workshops, per se, or laptop recovery workshops. We had staff bring the laptops into designated locations at given times. So again, the same process could take place on those endpoints, again, manually. So Microsoft Defender was installed going forward in our new environment to improve our overall anti-malware posture. And Monolize, as I mentioned, was the forensics tool that we used to capture or to do that forensic assessment at every endpoint. And a point of interest again, we did actually find malware, again, embedded within desktop or endpoints throughout the network. So they didn't seem any rhyme or reason per se, but the threat actors had not only entered into our data center, but they had left their tools behind, just scattered throughout randomly on endpoints throughout our network. So this process of forensic analysis really was necessary. Now, appreciating, of course, that the tools, the presence themselves, of course, the tools are benign without threat actor having access to them, per se. But just the presence alone of this malware was present when the network was concerning again, and again reinforced that this level of due diligence was what was necessary for us. So, as you can imagine, throughout this entire process and period, as we're going through this work, there were a lot of questions going on from our leadership, also from our library board, and it was really important for us to maintain frequent status updates and communications. Again, throughout this process, as Vickery mentioned, there were frequent meetings on a daily basis, and even a weekly, monthly basis, again, up to the library board to keep them apprised of the progress that we're making. So in terms of our lessons learned, one lesson learned that I would share with all of you is that table talk exercises are really an important preparation exercise for cybersecurity incidents. Just somewhat coincidentally, early in 2023, we had drafted TPL's cybersecurity playbook and response playbook. And we had then taken that playbook and worked it through as a tabletop exercise. At the time, though, there were other priorities, as there always are in large organizations, and so we had a more limited participation as we would have hoped for across different departments in the organization and representation. Ironically, though, well, perhaps not so much, that the playbook itself was a key resource in those first few hours of the response to cybersecurity recovery. It's one of the tools our teams leaned on in terms of, okay, what to do next. As Vickery mentioned, that initially we didn't believe that necessarily had data exfiltrated from the environment, but again, then through further forensic evidence, we came to understand that in fact we had data exfiltrated by the threat actors from our data center. Furthermore, became to understand that data included private information from current and former staff. So as a result, we recognized the potential for identity theft, and we made available credit monitoring for a period of 2 years for all of those potentially impacted as a result of this data exfiltration. We felt that obviously this was not only the right thing to do, but it's the appropriate thing to do, and tried to empathize with those people who were impacted as a result. I think taking some of these measures, including recognizing this as a need, is really one of those ways to rebuild that overall trust, again, with your customers. The event has occurred, we recognize that, but going forward, what can we do differently? Not only in terms of the restoration of our data center itself and the technologies that we are consuming and using, but also, again, furthermore, what else can we do in terms of supporting our staff, in this case, of those who've been directly impacted as a result of this event. So, let's go back one more.
Sorry.
Another huge part of regaining trust with your community is really communicate. We can't stress that enough, is that really communicating clearly frequently and empathetically with your community is a really key aspect around a cybersecurity response recovery. So I mentioned already, but we held many closed sessions with our library board to keep them informed and apprised of the recovery process. Once the forensic process assessment was complete, we did present a public report on the overall event and the experience. We also provided our board directly with a in-camera closed report as well, which provided a little detail around the forensic assessment that we were able to undertake. We kept our staff informed and kept them apprised with timely, transparent, and frequent communications. This was also collaboration with the union as well, and that was through virtual town halls, FAQs, emails, and in-person staff meetings. And I think on the slide I mentioned here, we set up a mailbox for internal staff and received and responded to over 2,000 messages there from staff internally with questions just about the event, about the breach of data, and about what kind of actions should they take in order to protect themselves going forward as well. Because we acknowledged as well that former staff had also been impacted, we set up a mailbox on our external website to support our customers and community at large. And again, over, I think it was 200 responses there, or 300 responses rather, sorry, that in terms of emails that were received and responded to in terms of what former staff could do in terms of protect themselves going forward. Earned media and social media as well is really a key aspect around trying to communicate your message, and we use that quite heavily throughout our cybersecurity process. And Vickery will lean into that a bit further later on. Collectively, like any large organization, TPL is a complex environment of many enterprise applications and services, and the cybersecurity event disrupted all of these across the organization. And most impactful to customers at large during this period, I'd say, was the ability for TPL to host our website, for operate our public computing services, and also particularly our circulation. Just jump to the next slide, Vickery. Thank you. So I'll walk through briefly these three areas to give you an idea of the kind of process we worked through. So due to the complexity of TPL's website and the various integrations we have with the platform, discovery platform as well, the catalog, full restoration transpired over a few months. Immediately following the cyber attack, TPL, we set up a temporary website to redirect our customers, and we used that platform also for sharing status updates with our customers as well throughout the period as we made progress and new information came to light. The temporary website remained active use while the full website was being restored, and that took, for a substantial restoration of our external website, took us around 3 months to bring that back online. With the full restoration, which included account management and our catalog, came online after about 4 months. Next slide, Vickery. Thank you. And you probably already realized that for many Torontonians as well, the public computing services that we offer at the Toronto Public Library, it's one of the only ways that many of our customers have access to technology, access to computer, and also access to the internet as well. This disruption of the cybersecurity event, it really was impactful, particularly on these residents, as this is one of their key resources into this kind of technology. And so confidently restoring our public computer network, which is a fleet of nearly 2,000 endpoints, which makes up a portion of our overall fleet of about 5,000 endpoints collectively across the network. It required, as I mentioned, this manual forensic processing of every single endpoint, which took us a period of about 3 months. That restoration process was as much to obviously protect the organization at large, but it's also as much to protect our customers as well, who are using those workstations on a daily basis. And to give you an idea of that kind of pent-up demand as well, in the first week we brought our public computer systems back online again, there were over 9,000 sessions booked in that first five days or so. During the period, the integrated library system was also offline, as Vickery mentioned. There were a lot of manual processes that were used, tried and true. The registrations and checkouts were recorded on paper. Ultimately, that data was aggregated into a database, and that database in turn was then imported back into our integrated library system. Interesting aspect around that recovery process is that the sequence of the data entry, the logistics of that has to be done in a very ordered and conscious manner to ensure that all the data integrity remains intact. Once we brought the ILS back online, the integrated library system back online, we didn't, to our knowledge anyway, receive any concerns or complaints from customers that the data was incorrect, which is fairly astounding considering the numbers that Vickery will share with you in a moment in terms of the number of items that were processed. So I hand over to Vickery.
Okay. So, so as we've mentioned, access to the library management software was unavailable for over 3 months, and all branch locations continued with the manual checkout process. But it also meant that nothing could be reshelved because we couldn't check them in. And so for the larger branches, they could box the materials and they could store them on site. For the smaller branches, they couldn't do that because they didn't have the space. So we had to rent tractor trailers. And so we ended up renting 15 53-foot tractor trailers to store boxes of return materials that would be checked in once our library management software was back online. And in addition to that, the larger branches had 23,000 boxes of returns that would also have to be checked in. So I have to say the sight of all the tractor trailers gathered a lot of media attention. And so what I would say to you, that if you're in a cyber incident, don't use tractor trailers for anything. Because it was ridiculous. The CBC, the Globe and Mail, you'll see later some of the coverage, it was crazy. So the staff, the work, and just to build a bit on what Steve just said about the work that staff did to check out, register, and then check in all these materials, uploading them to a clean environment was just a testament to the accuracy of their work. You'll see in a moment, over 1.4 million items were checked in from those tractor trailers and those 23,000 boxes. And they were reconciled with the library management software. And we actually had customers saying that when they went to their borrower record, they couldn't believe that everything was completely accurate in terms of what they had, the holes they had and what they borrowed and all that kind of thing. So, so that was great to see. Next slide. So, so this is the data. We had, so as I mentioned, 104 million items were checked in over a 3-week period. 620,000 items were put through our sorter. We have a 120 bin sorter that's about the size of a football field. And so we put 620,000 items through that sorter. In that first 3 weeks, we had 117,000 holds. But within the first week, we had 94,000 holds, which was just an incredible statement of the pent-up demand, but also demand for our physical collections. And everyone's not just interested in e-collections. They already had access to that. This was for physical content. And then we had 110,000 holds picked up within that first 3-week period. So that was really terrific in terms of the customer response. Then communications, we use our website and email tremendously. You'll see there's a green banner that says service update. That was the kind of the communications key for our customers, that we have a service update on the cyber incident. We used our website and email. We have an email newsletter we used, and that was really important too in terms of communicating on a regular basis with our customers. Then social media was also key. You'll see on social media, again, that green service banner that we used. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the Instagram logo. And when we got up and running, we did a video of our books going through the sorter, at this 120 bin sorter, and it got a huge number of views. People were fascinated. They had no idea. They kind of get this inside view of what goes on behind the scenes at the library. And how it started was, the rumors are true, that the library is back operating again. So, so we use those social media platforms as much as possible to communicate. And then earned media. The lawyer called us the media darlings because he couldn't believe how much media attention we were getting. You know, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, CP24, City TV, Global News, CBC. They all did a lot of coverage of this. And And this earned media actually was really helpful to us because it helped us get our key messages out to the public about our recovery and where we were in the recovery process and how hard everyone was working. And it really did build a lot of goodwill, I think, with the public because they knew what was going on. And then the last slide is just about customer feedback. And I'm going to have to go over here to read it. There's a lot, we just got fabulous customer feedback from people, but I'm going to read my favorite on this slide, which is, I'm a volunteer with Leading to Reading, and yesterday when my kids saw that the computers were working again, his face absolutely lit up, and he rushed over to the kids section to see if the shelves had been restocked, and they had, and he said to his mom, I'm going to take out all the books. So that was really heartwarming. That was the other sidebar of a result of having to box all these returns, is that our shelves were getting empty. It was just awful. So anyway, getting back to being able to deliver services again was fabulous, and the public was incredibly patient. And there are lots of heartwarming messages from the public, but also our staff was absolutely incredible through this whole process. And even though it was their personal data that was compromised through this process, they worked incredibly hard and creatively with workarounds and whatnot, and extra hours to get all the work done. So it was a really great collaborative, all hands on deck effort. So that's it. That's our presentation. So
thank you, Vickery and Steve. So at this part now, so we're gonna have a fireside chat, and then we're gonna open up actually for Q&A. So let me start with this. Thank you for being so generous and for being so open with us. To come out and tell the stories, I know that this is not necessarily an easy thing to do, but an important thing to do. And I know you saw the importance of coming out and talking about those things, and I'm very, very much appreciative of that. And particularly the times that we live right now, so I can never be more thankful for that. So I have a few questions for you, and I'm gonna be going, you, Vickery, you, Steve, so, and back and forth. So, and then after that, then we'll definitely open up for Q&A. And the first question that I have here is actually for you, Steve. So in the presentation, you spoke about bringing the services back in stages. So how did you determine when it was safe to bring those services back up?
So as I mentioned, in our instance, we took the position that everything was compromised, and we essentially rebuilt the data center from the ground up. But in terms of recovery as well, we had to really have confidence around what we're bringing back in again. Is it safe and is it clean? And we used multiple strategies with that process I mentioned. One, as I said, the team collectively called the quarantine island, which was this segmented network zone where data was restored to. And the systems or data was recessed for a period of time there to identify and remove malware before ultimately that was being brought back into our production environment. Similar again with the endpoint workstations. But really, it's a long and arduous process to do that to that level of detail, with that level of effectiveness, and that's ultimately how we built that, again, the trust and faith that what we bring back online, we could have confidence, is because we were given that time, fortunately, and we were given the space to do what we needed, we felt was necessary to do, to regain that trust again.
Yeah, and that's incredible, and that's actually a very time-consuming process, I would say.
Very time-consuming.
And I don't know if you were able to share this or not, Steve. Do you know how they got in?
In our instance, we do have a forensic analysis that was completed after the fact, and really it's retrospective in terms of by collecting a lot of information. We know that the threat has entered our environment through an internet-facing server. So clearly there was a security flaw in the server itself. And from there we know we have a fairly strong idea of the path that it was taken then move through the data center and what systems they were impacting. That's probably as much as I can share, but ultimately though, a key outcome is be fully aware of everything that's being hosted in your environment, be fully aware of your patch levels and security updates, and ensure that you're maintaining them consistently is what I would share as feedback.
We had a lot of questions about this, and people kind of thought at first, they just assumed it was through phishing or something, but it wasn't through that at all. So.
Yeah, no, and thanks actually for sharing.
And that's a key message also for us to share that staff, because our staff was so conscientious that many were of the opinion, did somebody click on something? Did we create this? And so we didn't necessarily share our staff that no, it was nothing to do with our staff actions or inactions per se. It was inside our data center, unfortunately.
Yeah, patching is essential in this case. Right? So thank you. So, Vickery, the next question here is for you. So you spoke greatly on the importance of communication and transparency in maintaining public trust.
Yes.
How did you keep the communications well coordinated between the different groups and constituencies inside and outside TPL?
Well, that was really through our governance structure. I mean, I can't stress enough the importance of that governance structure, because it's key for your decision-making processes and for communications and for making decisions about what those communications are. We ran as I said, we ran all of our communications through our breach council, just to make sure that we were not saying something that we shouldn't, and to make sure that we were always, sticking to the facts. And it was the timeliness of the communications was really important too. As I said at one point, at first we didn't think any personal information was compromised, but then, this event happened on October 28th. By November 5th, we had figured out that there was personal information that was compromised. It was the staff and former staff information, including social insurance numbers and birth dates. And so November 5th, we issued the statement, both first with our union and the staff, and then with the public, just to be clear and transparent about what we had discovered. So it was, that was really, really important to keep on top of that. And I think that, it's an important part in terms of building credibility and trust with all of your stakeholders.
Okay. No, thank you. And now, I can imagine, and the complexity of it all, actually, just to making sure that all those things actually are well coordinated and timed. Right? And Steve, back to you now. Through the presentation, and you, Vickery, you mentioned that as well, so you made a decision of not paying the ransom. And it meant that it would take months to recover. So knowing what you know now, would you consider paying the ransom?
Well, we took the position ultimately, Davis, that when the library board agreed not to pay the ransom, it's funding cybercrime, and effectively you're just funding those threat actors to go on and repeat the same process again to the next organization, institution. In our case, we had confidence in our backup that we could recover our data as much as it would take longer and it would take time. But in any event, I think from our perspective as well, paying the ransom potentially to get our data decrypted again, it wouldn't give us the confidence that we had a clean environment. We still have to go through the work anyway. We still had to make sure we had an understanding of what malware was in our space, where the security flaw was, what had occurred, and we still had to work through that whole process. So paying the ransom wouldn't have changed our timeline necessarily in terms of got us back faster. It may have got our data back faster, but it wouldn't have got us back in terms of our environment faster. So there's the unfortunate outcomes, I would say, of these incidents is that it takes work and it takes time, and so it's better risk mitigate up front.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you're saying this, because there is a misconception that say once you pay the ransom, yes, you can pay the ransom, you can get the data back, you can resume your services back. Reality is you still have to rebuild the whole thing.
You still have to know what's happening in your environment, how did this occur, and what needs to be corrected. And as I mentioned, I think in the presentation, we even identified the malware tools, not just within our data center, but randomly throughout, endpoints throughout our network. And so, again, reinforced the due diligence had to be done to clean everything.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because also there is no guarantee that even if you pay the ransom, that the data is going to be deleted. So there has some recent
No.
examples actually that proves to be true. Once actually there was with actually some of those major ransomware actors actually where they got to them and they noticed that data was never deleted.
No,
So,
that's right.
Yeah.